Welcome back, everybody. Got another vid. Uh, again, disclaimer: nothing intended for illegal purposes. I'm talking about history, the past, and I'm not aiding and abetting or encouraging people to do anything illegal. This is just history or questions that come up about the breed in particular. So I can only speak of the past because I don't know anything current. So sometimes I put up a disclaimer, sometimes I don't, but it's the same for all of them, no matter what. It's the same disclaimer. This came from, I forget when this happened, but it came from Zombie Quan, I think. And the question was, when was the pinnacle of the game and what great dogs and dog breeders were at the forefront at the time? Honestly, that is opinion. But I'll say this, every era or every how could you generation has or had a great era of pit dogs and breeders, right? So, and most people, which this is, this is true. This is an honest answer. Most people, if they were active in the dogs in the past, whether it was the 1800s, 1910s, 1920s, 1930s, 1950s, 1970s, 80s, 90s, whatever, they're going to think that was the best era of dogs. And rightly so, because they're familiar with those eras. Anything before that, they weren't around. Anything after they retired, it's all secondhand knowledge. It's all what's written or what somebody told them. Just like in the past, that's all we have is what was written and what was told to us, right? And a lot of it is with great accuracy too, because as each generation comes to the forefront, the past generation, at least for a lot of them, are there to tell them what happened. And that's how past history is passed on by the eyewitnesses who were there at the time. So you can use that with some accuracy to say this is what happened, or this is how good a dog was, or this is how good a dog produced, or these were the best breeders of their time. So without choosing one myself, I'm going to say my time was the best time. And I can give examples of that. Somebody before me is going to say theirs was the best time. Somebody after me is going to say theirs was the best time. And not only that, they're going to say there were better dogs in the past, there were better dogs during their time, or there are better dogs now in the future. Right? They're not lying. That's their opinion. And if you've been around 30, 40, 50, even 60 years in the dogs, right? And you saw the changes, you saw the transitions, you saw the improvement or the decline of certain dogs, whatever it is, you can give your honest opinion on what you saw. That's why, sometimes when I talk to old guys, and ask them whether the dog's better in your time or after that, some inevitably will say they were better in my time. Some will say they were better after my time. The dogs were improved. So it's all opinion based on their own observation and where they, where they were at, who they saw, who they went into, what dogs they had, particular bloodlines, from which breeders, right? So it's not a simple answer. But if you want to go back to the 1890s, you go to the English dogs, most of them from Charlie Lloyd and that, you have Champion Pilot, Champion Paddy, you have the Irish dogs from Feely and Leitner, and you have famous dogs, and other breeders like Colby and Tudor, and there's a bunch of them, Donovan and Corcoran. You move up, you have Corvino and Heinzel and Tudor still, and you have keep going. You got Carver, Boudreaux, Crenshaw, two Crenshaws, and it just goes like that. So back in the 1890s, those were some of the foundation dogs. You know, you have the Gas House dog, you have Fly of Panama, the Kobe side, you have Kager and Pincher and Dime. You know, certainly those dogs were keyed on. You know, you have the old family Red Nose, starting back early on. You know, from Lightner and Feely and different dogs uh, coming up. You know, with Ferguson Centipede. Then you have Hemphill using those dogs a lot. You got Cappy Ross and um, what's the old man's name? Uh, you know, the Geronimo Jake Wilder. You know, uh, you have different people that prefer different bloodlines and different crosses. You know, back in the day, you had Kobe Lightner, you had Feely Tudor and Tudor Kobe and you know, Armitage is in there, and a lot of them. A lot of these breeders, Bruce, and you got names and names and names, different names uh, coming through, and uh, it's always the mixture of the English and Irish dogs, but it's particular breeders breeding uh, dogs they got from different sources, and then other breeders using their dogs and other dogs they got from different sources. So it's a conglomeration, you know. What happens generally is someone will make a family of dogs like Kobe or like the old family red-nosed dogs, right? And they'll keep them pretty straight, pretty pure, right? And that's what they are. Or you key on a particular dog like Jeep or Mayday, and you make a family of dogs out of that, or Eli or Bully Son. Or you have the Ed Crenshaw dogs, which were basically Kobe Lightner, right? Who his influence in a lot of different people, you know, uh, Carver, of course. You know, you got Baker Davis having his stuff, you know, and the Mexicans with the Stu Fowler Red Lady stuff, and you have all the different guys from New Mexico that kept that stuff going, and uh, people in the deep South, you know, all over Texas, Oklahoma, that used Ed Crenshaw dogs, Jake Kaler, and Earl Hunter, Ray Long, a lot of different people. So you have particular dogs that are foundation or particular breeders that are foundation. Moving up into the 50s, you know, late 50s, you have the Daibo dogs, you know. And with the Daibo dogs, you have to acknowledge or at least recognize that they, you know, changed the game or they improved the game or whatever, you know, whatever adjective you want to use. They were a prominent factor, the Daibo dogs. At the same time, in the late 50s, or even before that, around that 50s going into the 60s, you know, you have the Trahan's Rascal dog, you know, relative to Daibo with the Corvito breeding in them. At the same time, or again shortly afterwards, you have the Bullet dogs. Bullet was a prominent sire. A lot of people in the southeast and east and deep south used a lot of the Bullet dogs. And even Ed Crenshaw incorporated the Bullet stuff into his stuff. And you have, you know, those three sires, I would say at that time were probably the best. Maybe Daibo's number one, maybe Rascal's number two, and Bullet's number three, or Bullet's number two and Rascal's number three, however you want to look at it. That was the dominant stuff going around. But again, we have to acknowledge, where did all these dogs come from? They came from the Northeast, most of them. That's where Corvino was. That's where Henry was. That's where Komisinski was. Komisinski goes way back when Tudor was doing stuff. He may have been a young man, but he was back there, you know. Armitage, all from the north. You know, Kobe, all from the north. So that's where the basis or the foundation of the dogs came from, including you know, Lloyd with Pilot and Champion Patty and them, you know. And then you have Semi's in Mississippi area with his Irish dogs, and he incorporated some English dogs. And this is going way back, but that's what led up to having this Daibo and Rascal and Bullet Blood, right? After Daibo, of course, you have the Spike Black Widow or the Zeke Black Widow or the Daibo Black Widow dogs, you know, that were heavy throughout the South Texas, Oklahoma area. And of course, the Daibo dogs, they actually came from Arizona through Howard Heinzel and Richardson, you know. Even Hubbard's Gimp was in Arizona at the time that breeding was made. Hubbard was in Arizona. He was from somewhere else, but that's where he ended up with. Bill Anderson was there. A lot of the guys, because of health reasons, when they got older, moved to Arizona because of the weather. It's hotter down there, and it was supposed to be healthier for them. So that's why we see some of these breeders from other places moving to Arizona, meeting up with each other, doing dogs together. That's where Arizona Pete came from, and Daibo and Lil and White Rock and uh, uh, you know, Lark and Bambi and, you know, a lot of them dogs. That's where they started from. So into the 70s, you have the, you know, of course, you got the Eli dogs. You got Bully Son Jr. and I mean Bully Son, Eli Jr. and Brendy and Nanaras went to Mexico, you know, or Lupe, not Nanaras. She wasn't the litter mate. I forget the litter mate to Brendy and Bully Son and Eli Jr. But they had a sister that went to Mexico. I think Nanaras was a litter mate to Midnight Cowboy. That's how it went. But you have that phase, you know. Also, up in the north, you have the Kingfish stuff, and you have the Turtle Buster stuff, and you have the Lightner blood, Lightner Colby from Hetrick, you know. Frank Roca used them, and Red Becker used them, and different people. You know, you have Ozzie Stevens with the Homer blood, and then you have the Greenwood and the Jimmy Boots influence, more Daibo stuff, you know, coming from the Utah area and Colorado area, moving out to the northeast. You know, that's where some of Ozzie Stevens' dogs came from, and Bob Bryan, and you know, and they incorporated some Komasinski blood. So you have a difference of opinion because you have different breeders and different famous dogs. You know, Art was originally from Texas, went to Ohio. Zebo was originally from the Carolinas, went to Ohio. You know, you have all the dogs in Michigan and different breeders there. You know, all the 5 Great Lakes states. You know, New York, and you have Wisconsin and all that. So, you know, in the 70s, where you have the boom of the Carver and the Boudreaux dogs, you know, you still had some of the dogs in the Northeast, like Komasinski dogs and Ozzie Stevens dogs, and different breeders from up there, you know, Red Becker, and keeping their stuff going, you know. Uh, After that, moving into the 80s and 90s, you have where you see Grand Champion Buck and you know, that Zebo and Art stuff, you know, crossed with the Kingfish and Zebo and Art stuff crossed together, you know, and it just branches out from there, you know. I won't go too far past that, you know, because after that you have the Jeep stuff and you have the Mayday stuff and you have even the Frisco stuff and Chinaman and, you know. So it's hard to say which was the greatest era because, like I said, when you ask somebody, they're going to tell you their era was the best. And then you have people that weren't around during those times and weren't familiar with those dogs or dogmen. Nostalgically speaking, they're going to say, man, I wish I was around in that era to see them dogs. That's natural too. And a lot of times it has to do with the particular dogs you have, how they're bred, where they came from. You would have loved to see their ancestors, you know. I'm familiar with the white dogs. You know, they were our competitors. I saw a bunch of them. You know, and they're basically, you know, Ed Crenshaw, uh, uh, White Bandit, which was bullet bred. You know, and then they made some crosses with the Heinzel and the Boleo and different stuff. You know, all the Freddie Jones dogs, starting in the '70s. You know, came from that. Came from the Ed Crenshaw blood with Major and Reno and Leprechaun, and you know, he had the dog that lost to Pit General, Black Bart, and you know, Freddie Jones and Leo Cunard, who was from Mississippi. They used the same dogs, different ends of the country, and they bred them and like that. You know, they incorporated that Kobe Leitner stuff from Ed Crenshaw with the Diabo stuff through Crenshaw's buck. You know, Spike and Jeff's brother. You know, and that's what they ended up with, kind of that Kobe Leitner Diabo cross. You know, and that was done all over the country too. So it just depends on what era you're in, nostalgic wise, or whether you lived it. You know, you consider that era to be the best. It's based on opinion. In some cases, it's based on experience. But like I said, that experience has to come over a couple or several decades for you to have an educated opinion. And even that, you know, the opinions change on that. So that's a little bit of history. Hard to answer that question, but feel free to put what you consider the best era. You know, somebody's gonna say today is the best era of bulldogs. You know, especially in Mexico. You know, a lot of them dogs went to Mexico and they kept it going, and things haven't changed down there too much. And you know, you're going to get some people from Eastern Europe where they can still be active with the dogs. They're going to say the same thing. They got the best dogs over there. And that's true with different parts of the country or different parts of the world. They think their dogs are the best or were the best and came from the best. So, hope you enjoy the video. Feel free to put where you think your opinion fits or who you think was the best and where. And once again, thanks for your support.